Hey, everybody, it is that time. Office hours. Office hours, a 20-minute problem solving show. Only 20 minutes, no more than that. So we got to get to the point, and these are real world examples that have happened somewhere to somebody. So join us, Josh Tobar, principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garland ISD, Garland, USA. Welcome this awesome leadership panel right here to this side of me. So let's go around the bend and introduce everybody. Dean Packard, talk to us.
Hey guys, welcome to the Office Hours. Once again, Unlock the Middle's Tuesday night show with real life scenarios about things that happen in the trenches in our schools. So looking forward to tonight. Josh, I know you got something great for us. Again, my name is Dean Packard, the principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts. Nice to see all of you here with us tonight. Let's kick it around. Let's go over to Sharad. You're up. Oh, Rod, you're up.
My name is Sharad Laws. I am a middle school principal.
Nice to have you with us. Fernanda.
Hi, Fernanda Flores. I am in Houston, Texas, and I am the proud principal of La Promesa. It's a newcomer dual language high school.
Awesome. Great to have you with us. Dan.
My name is Dan Wolf. I'm assistant principal at Sunray Elementary in Pasco County, Florida. Happy to be here.
Pasco County, home of St. Leo land for me when I was back a young kid. Nice to have you back, Dan.
Thank you.
Francesco.
Good evening, Francisco Ross, principal of 3 specialty campuses in El Paso, Texas.
Outstanding. What a great crew we have tonight, Josh. Here you
All
go,
right.
brother.
Here we go. And if you want to see what Dan looks like, you got to go to his Twitter because he is a very handsome devil. His camera couldn't take him. But here we go. Before we get started, those higher order thinking skills, that thinking process, here we go. Question, Francisco, what was the very first toy ever that took you to the moon? What do you remember?
The very first point ever that took me to the moon.
Juguete.
Took me to the moon was my Tonka truck.
All right, Tonka truck. Dan.
Repeat the question again.
What was the very first toy that you remember as a kid that took you to the moon that you were like, wow?
I would probably have to say probably my G.I. Joe plane that I got as a helicopter. That was just the best thing ever. Awesome.
Fernanda?
Also, my brother's G.I. Joes we used to play, and so one of those planes took us there.
Awesome. Profe Sherrod?
My remote control truck.
Remote control truck. Dean Packard?
My Atari Centipede, Pac-Man, or something of that nature. These old bones.
I agree. The Atari 2600 was on my bed. And I like, oh my God. That was great. All right. Question number 2. Here we go. When you are at the ballpark, Fernanda, which one do you want to sing to? Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett or Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond?
Man, neither. I'm not very much a fan.
You have
but
to pick one?
I will choose my own. I will always dance to mariachi songs, remembering my country.
No, hombre. All right, Sherrod.
Sweet Caroline. Dun, dun, dun.
There you go. Francisco?
Margaritaville.
All right, Dean.
Sweet Caroline. New England. Come on. It's a Boston tradition.
Margaritaville all the way.
And the answer is Sweet Caroline. Sweet Caroline is the answer.
Okay, I have a favorite one now.
Huh?
I have a favorite one now.
Okay, we'll pick one.
Sweet Caroline.
All right, there you go.
Knew the answer.
There you go. And the last one. When you go to the movies, Dean Packard, popcorn and drink or nachos and drink?
Popcorn and drink.
Fernanda?
Popcorn and drinks.
Francisco?
Popcorn and drink.
Dan?
Popcorn and drink, and I got to have raisinets with that too. I can't leave that out.
All right, being a rebel, adding one more thing. Gerard?
Popcorn and drink.
You're all right. Exactly. Popcorn and drink.
And
all
drink.
Right. I'm glad we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Out there. out there, real things that we all face. We all face being part of the chair that we sit in, especially in nowadays, correct? So here you go. What would you do out there, future administrator? What would you do out there, AP or principal? You have duty in a highly contested varsity baseball game. The game is very close and both teams keep chatting at each other. You're standing behind the fence located behind the umpire. You see that the pitches are getting close to the players, and the parents keep yelling at each other at the pitch and at the umpire and at the opposing school. All of a sudden, the batter gets hit, and he rushes the pitcher. Both benches clear, and the brawl ensues. As you and security run to the field, you see the parents go onto the field, and fists are flying and bats are flying. Francisco, what do you do?
You know what, Josh? I think to me, and I experienced this before in my previous campus, and the name of the game is being proactive, not letting it get to that point, and pre-planning, especially as the leader of the school. You know which are the contested schools, you know which are the bitter rivalries that you have, and really taking action ahead of, trying not to be reactive to the situation, and trying to have all your ducks in a row, having administration from the other campus there, having extra police there, and having 2 admin at the games plus yourself.
All right, good, good, good. Dan, what would you do?
Well, just exactly like Francisco just said as well. I think you got to be proactive versus being reactive and having those preventative measures. I think just based on the scenario you presented, when you see the two different sides starting to get really heated and contested over things, as the administrator or overseeing things, you need to, whether you get on the announcements and go ahead and just have those fair warnings and things like that, because when it gets to that where you want to avoid those kind of conflicts, because at the end of the day, it's just a game. It's about just the kids going out there and playing. But if it does break out like that, maybe just flip on Sweet Caroline and see if that might break it up a little bit. So,
Fernanda.
I think proactive is always what we need to do. But if it is at that moment, I think first of all, removing the students that are playing, and then trying to see if there is a parent that is the one rallying out the others that you can talk to and start to have conversations to calm them down, and always being present. And I think the biggest thing is building relationships. So when you do see parents and students getting to that point, that you have enough of a conversation with them, a relationship that you can go up to them and say, hey, I know things are getting heated up. Don't let them get to you. If there's a moment, like, let's move on, let's stop, let's do something, so that it's in a way where you're not escalating it.
Profe.
Of course, being proactive, making sure that we communicate all expectations before the game starts, and having maybe on hand just in case things like this do happen. But in the heat of the moment, and don't have people on standby, I'm all about trying to get the students taken out of the situation first. So if I can get all the students out of the way and just tell them to go to one area of the field and have the other team students go to the other area, I think clearing the sense out was of clearing everybody out. And I have my bullhorn there with me as always. If I were in this situation, I'm having my bullhorn. I'm talking about a big bullhorn I could talk into. And also, once we get everything squared away and we get to the root cause, I am talking to parents about possible law enforcement getting involved, just having conversations, and probably banning them from going to baseball games again. But just really the key is like Francisco and Dan both said, just being proactive in the beginning before it gets to that point.
Mr. Official,
Yeah,
president.
I'm glad you said that. I was actually contemplating on visibility and relationships on how important they are prior to going out there. There's no doubt about that. But being a high school basketball official and understanding sports level and being a head coach that I was for years, at the end of the day, I think that the officials on the field would have to be uh, strong enough to understand and see the situation coming to fruition. And quite frankly, and I've seen so many really good officials step out in front and stop and have conversations with kids and de-escalate on the spot. And it's hard to do, especially if you're alone in a baseball game. Say you're the only person behind the plate, and then you're relying on the coaches to step in. Well, guess what? I've learned that in the moment of coaching, what happens is you lose your cool. You get caught up in the flow of a game, and sometimes it's a very hard thing to control. So, as an administrator, I'm going to make sure I have those strong relationships with people. They're going to see me out there being visible. And if I have to step in, I would step in. But I also love what Rod said about law enforcement. If there's any type of physical contact or something over the top, you better believe we're going to take it to that level, because kids need to see that there's accountability for all the actions that go out there. So that's a really good scenario that I would hope that real seasoned, strong officials would be able to mitigate and ensure that the game could go on with integrity.
And I'm glad you said that, Dean, specifically about, and we all need to, and it depends on what level that you've been at. We don't get a full crew of umpires and officials in baseball. That's the reality. And what I could present to all of you is that in this scenario, there were only two of them. And one of them was very young at the varsity level. And you understand there's different levels of, and Dean could tell you this being the head official, that the experience that you bring to the table. But once that started flying out, and once those bats, I'm expressing to you, there were bats flying out and parents fighting each other on the field. This is a real example that actually happened. And I understand about being proactive, guys. But the reality that we see on YouTube and the reality that I'm presenting on this scenario is fists are flying and bats are flying. What would you do? I'm glad that we said we're going to be proactive. I understand that we all have our rivalries with our schools, but you're the one in charge. And there's only more often than not, you have one AP or one principal doing two games because you don't want to give over duty to people. So I'm presenting to you, what would you do once it starts flying? Once the actual blows start going? Francisco.
Call 911, school police immediately. And like Sherrod said, move students away. Each one to one side, trying to get him back on their buses immediately.
Dan, would you like to add anything to that?
I agree. Definitely, students first and foremost, getting them to safety. And like I said, calling law enforcement to because the situation needs to get under control again. And that's the only way I think, the way to go.
And just like Dean said, we all know this with our tenure that we have. I know we have a lot of experience here, that sometimes the coaches do get into that spirit. And you have some coaches that are not professionally focused during the actual game. Sometimes they act like the players. We've seen it. We've seen that before. So what would you think about that, Fernanda?
I think you know the people that you work with, and you know who are the ones that will escalate it to that point. And so just the same way you're taking the students out of the way, you're taking the people that are going to escalate the situation. So if there is another person apart from me at the game, that person would control the kids going in, and I would directly go to that other coach and say, you need to walk with me. We need to go right now, so that you can control it and it doesn't continue to escalate.
Profe.
I'm calling law enforcement. It's all about the safety of the students at the moment. We got adults out there. We got we got the umpires out there. We got the adults out there, but it's the safety, because that's what I'm responsible for at that moment. If I'm at a game and I'm watching those students at a game, their safety is my number one concern, and I'm going to do whatever I have to in order to make sure that they are safe first. So, like I said, getting them onto their buses. I'm telling students to go to your bus, and when law enforcement comes, then we can have the conversation about what happened, and they'll let us know how to proceed with their training and things that they have experience with. that let us know how to proceed, whether it's going to be some disturbing the peace, charges or just whatever. But I want to get law enforcement involved right away because I can't handle that big crowd. Would be the best if I'm not able to handle it myself.
I'm going to agree with Rod there in regards to once it becomes physical. I think we have an obligation to ensure that 911 is called, and everybody has said the same thing. Francesco, you as well. At the end of the day, students are our number one concern. They're in our care and our safety. We have to ensure that we get them in a place where they can be away from all that noise. I'm going to go back for a second and say, listen, I hire coaches, and when I hire coaches, we talk about dealing with situations such as these and what the expectation is if you're going to work in a field of education, and coaching a team in education is an offshoot of being in a classroom. There are certain things that they have to be able to uphold. And if I see a coach, or if a coach works for me that can't contain themselves or put themselves in a position where they can actually model for kids what the expectations are, they're not working for me. I'm not going to put myself in that position. And I'm one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet in your life. And I hate to lose. But you're not going to jeopardize safety for anybody in any regard over a game. You just can't. My gosh, the world's it's a crazy place as it is. We don't need to add to that craziness. So again, I'm going back to getting support from law enforcement, then going back and debriefing afterwards and making sure that something like that never happens again, and having very, very direct conversations with individual parents who are there, who will get no trespassing orders and not be back on school property ever again, if that's the case. I won't tolerate that. That's an absolute zero tolerance for something like that.
And depending on what your district is, you also go to channel 1, the district channel for the radio, and you call district security to come to the campus. And just so you know, in that scenario, I was alone for 15 minutes before anyone showed up. So it took 15 minutes before anyone showed up to support that scenario that happened right there. Mm. And remember what I stated to you. Parents were fighting against parents. Kids were fighting against kids. And them bats were flying, let me tell you. My 3-piece suit was destroyed. So the only thing I could present to you is one of those things that however proactive you can be in any sport, and we all seen this in any sport, just like that, triggers off everything. So it's one of those conversations that I think that we all need to have and put it out into the actual world, in the internet, so that people learn from these examples to not let anything build up. Crucial that we learn from each other in scenarios like this, because this is no longer a what if, now it's a when. And we've seen it redundantly across the United States when this happens. Your closing thoughts, Francisco?
I think you're absolutely right, Josh. And when we add factors like with so many people carrying weapons now, it takes the game to another level. So it's really important that these conversations are held within leadership teams.
Dan?
I think when we are jeopardizing that security, everybody loses. It doesn't matter about the game. Everybody, the risks that we're putting, the lives, and it's just. But I think just what everybody said, just having those measures in place and walking through those scenarios and things like that is what we do in our county all the time for all our safety drills and things like that and everything, because that's the world we live in. And I think that also has to go out onto the field and sports and everything and play those scenarios out too, so that you are prepared because those things will happen.
Fernanda?
Yeah, I'm thinking really speaking about it with your teams and what are the reactions everybody should have, what are the systems, what happens if they don't show up when you call, because there are things that in the moment you won't think, but you need to be prepared at all times. And not only you, but everybody in that team needs to know what is the next step when things like that happens, what are those structures, so that if you're not caught off guard.
Profe?
No matter how proactive we are, no matter how many steps we take, no matter how many we have, just make sure that when, as administrators, thinking with our feelings and emotions, but that we have tried to be proactive in order to everything that we've done to avoid the situation is here now. Let's go ahead and start thinking. What do we do? Let's get things in place. No time to think with feelings and emotions. Let's get our logic in, go ahead and get our practices in. And if we have to practice these things, we got to be proactive and practice these things.
Mr. Official, Mr. Dean Packard.
I'm going to say we're seeing way too much of this in sports across all spectrums. I don't care what sport that it is. And we need to get back to helping kids understand that life is toughest sometimes. Sometimes you're going to get knocked down. You got to be able to come back with resiliency and deal with that. That is a very simple thing that we as educators try to help our kids understand all the time. And I'll tell you, I cringe when I hear this stuff, okay, because I've never been involved with one as an official, but I will tell you what. We got to train our coaches. We got to train our teachers. We got to train our staff. And we got to go over scenarios like this all the time to be prepared. And then it's a really good practice to put in place in any school district. Think about the worst. You can always be prepared for anything comes your way.
And I like, in closing this, and we're a little bit over the 20-minute mark, is this. Look, I don't care at all. One administrator should not be doing two games. There should always be one administrator and a security officer at each event. I'm sick and tired of administrators sitting in their office during the game and not being at the site or presenting who they are to the official at that moment, because the official needs to know who they call upon whenever there's nonsense there. And there's so many people that are lazy that do not go and present themselves saying, I'm the administrator on duty, call on me, to be proactive, as Francisco says, so that nothing happens out there. So if you learn anything from this scenario is an administrator at each game, security officer, contentious games with PD there, making sure that you always present yourself, introduce yourself to the officials and saying, I'm the guy that you call. So take that. This is a real world example that has happened to yours truly. And let me tell you, it was a very horrible situation to be in the middle of. But that's it. But you know what, Dean? The flagship show this Sunday, it's not over. We have Kevin Curtis coming in. Kevin Curtis, hey, if you don't connect with me, I'm not going to contact with you. So join us this Sunday with Kevin Curtis on the flagship show, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Sherrod. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, Dan. Check him out so you know what he looks like. And Francisco, take it away, Dean.
Hey, listen, we hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much for joining us on the roundtable tonight. I'll tell you, anytime that you can have conversation with other administrators about real life situations, you get a little bit better. So I wish you guys all a great week. Enjoy yourselves. Take care of those kids. They deserve our best. Have a great week, everybody. Everybody hold on for